We're doing Care Week to become uncomfortable in like this situation and talking about race and ethnicity because and diversity, it's important, and I think everybody has their struggles but also their perspectives, and sharing them and hearing about other people's stories is so valuable. And I just think that starting the conversation when we're young, it's just so important. Tell us a story about something that made you feel small due to your race, gender, sexual orientation, where you came from, or something of that nature.
Time where I felt sad or small because of my race is when I went to Miramani. We had finals week and leadership is supposed to write in chalk like encouraging things or make posters to encourage people or leave post-it notes on people's lockers. And in my locker I got Coon and the N-word with an R, go home, written on my locker, and it made me feel ashamed of my skin and sad that people treated me differently solely based on the color of my skin and not who I was as a person. I'm not just the ratchet, stereotypical black girl. I'm also a sister, the BSU president, going to college, funny, and smart.
So I was in class and we were talking about Kaepernick being the face of Nike, and a student said that they didn't care about the whole situation and they didn't like Kaepernick and they didn't care to even speak on it because it wasn't their problem. And so I said why, and this person told me to shut up because he wasn't talking to me. And then I said that he was talking around me, and he told me to shut up again. He told me that I was a B-word, and he said that I was acting up because I was on my period, and that whatever he had to say, whatever I had to say, he didn't care because I was just PMSing, and I lost what could have been an educational rest of the period because I had to stand up and leave because I knew he wasn't going to. Okay. Just because I'm a woman doesn't make my opinions or thoughts any less valid.
So when I was a student in elementary school, I was the only student that was of Asian descent, and I used to come to lunch with a bunch of what we call show power pork buns with barbecued red meat on the inside and sesame balls for dessert, while every other student had ham sandwiches and Gushers and Capri Suns. I used to get made fun of on a daily basis because my fellow students didn't know what I was eating, and they would call it animal food. They would say I was eating dogs, or they would say I was eating bird seed for lunch because they didn't understand that my culture was a lot different than theirs. And just because I eat different food from different countries doesn't make me any less human or less valid as an American.
When I was in high school, I overheard one of my teachers referring to Mexican people as wetbacks. Because of my light skin and blue eyes, he didn't know that I'm half Mexican. I didn't say anything to him at the time because I figured he'd explain himself the same way other people had when they said a racial slur in front of me. Oh, I wasn't talking about you. So who were you referring to? My dad? My grandma? My cousins and aunts and uncles? I was upset with myself for not saying anything to him, but I didn't want to have a bad relationship with my teacher. I wish I would have had the courage to stand up for myself, my family, and my heritage.
Being young, and I think I told you this when I used to try to like wash off the black, or to bite my lips down because I didn't want to have big lips because I used to be made fun of for having big lips, right? And I feel so bad for the kids who these days still feel that way. I can remember back, I think like in middle school, actually not even middle school, elementary school, early elementary school, knowing that I was different than my peers. And I think it had to do with the way I was treated by my teachers. I can speak of one already, which is so weird that I can remember my third grade teacher, Miss Jorgensen, which I have no idea how old, I know where she is in life now. But I do remember in particular that Miss Jorgensen would overlook me as a student, and I think she had low expectations for me as a student. And I think as a kid, I didn't understand how to get the attention that I wanted to, and so I think this is very common. I see it even with kids now, is that they act out. And I wouldn't say act out because they're bad people, but act out because they want to get some sort of attention, some sort of acknowledgement that they're even there. And I mean, what's funny is that I think that throughout my life I've adapted to myself in my environment. So being a black man, you know, I've learned to have to deal with being alone. I've learned how to talk with different people. If you know, outside of my immediate like family or immediate community, because if I wanted to connect with somebody, if I wanted to be noticed, I had to put it amongst myself to connect with them versus people seeking to connect with me. And I think it's changed me and formed me into a person who I am today. And it's also changed the way I interact with students. So when I'm walking around, I see a student who may be in the position that I was in when I was their age, I try to reach out to them because I know that when I was a kid, I would have loved to have somebody kind of reach out to me and not have to act out in order to get that attention or to be noticed. Were the struggles that I went through as a kid, were they valuable in some way? And sometimes I'm in this weird space where like I think it's important for people to go through struggles because you don't grow unless you're uncomfortable. You don't, you know, when you're working out, if you're going through practice and practice is easy, do you become a better athlete? No. If you're lifting weights, if I lift up 2-pound weights, I'm not going to get better. Same thing with your mind, and same thing with your, much of your heart or soul or whatever it is. Like, I'm not saying everyone needs to go through some hard times, but sometimes I hear things that people are going through, and I have to like respect that they're, you know, this is hard for you. This is like the first time someone picks up a weight. Okay, it's okay. You pick up that weight. It's hard.
Yeah.
But then hopefully they build that strength over time so that they find out in the long run, oh, that 1 pound weight, that was nothing. You know, it's something I went through. I got stronger because of it.